recall that the Senate on Tuesday approved electronic transmission on election results to INEC's results viewing portal, while retaining manual collation as a backup where technology fails, following an emergency review of the Electoral Act Amendment bill. Now, lawmakers, however, rejected the call to make real-time transmissions compulsory, a move that has continued to draw criticism from opposition parties and civil society groups who fear that it could weaken electoral safeguards ahead of the 2027 elections. Now, presiding officers are now required to upload results electronically after voting and documentation. Meanwhile, some demonstrators are still expected at the National Assembly today as activists and youth groups sustain pressure for stronger transparency and measures. To discuss this, we are joined by Public Affairs Analyst Professor Simeone Nnah, and also the Director of Programs at the Yiaga, Africa, Cynthia Mbamalu. Thank you so much for joining us. Professor, I will start with you. What policy considerations likely influence the Senate's decision to approve electronic transmissions while retaining manual collation as a contingency, or a contingency rather?
It is very simple: enlightened self-interest. If you check the number of senators that got to the Senate by merit in the last election, I don't think they're up to 60%. Mm-hmm. So when you talk of electronic transmission of results, some of them will not have the ability to manipulate the way they manipulated in 2023.
Right.
So the caveat there is to give them room for manipulation. That's the only way to explain this, because every other reason they are given has fallen flat on his face, because all of us know, because there was a question one of them was asked: do you have a POS machine in your village? Do people operate the POS machine? He said yes. He said, what did they use to operate that POS machine? So even in the remote villages, the thing is that once you transfer it to the IRF, it will hang there if there's no network. Within an hour or two, when you move to an area where there's network, the thing will be uploaded. It's as simple as that. And if in the course you delete anything there, it will be noticed in the area that something was deleted, and the question should be raised. So I don't know what excuse they are giving other than enlightened self-interest.
And then, Cynthia,
the House of Reps have passed that, and the House of Reps did not, manipulate the issue as the Senate is trying to manipulate. And I'm disappointed with senators like Nnah that raised a point of order that there should be a division in the Senate so that they know who is voting what. At a point, he now chickened out. I don't know, because they said there was commotion in the House. At the end of the day, he chickened out. Some of us are disappointed, honestly.
Let me now move to Cynthia. In terms of benchmarks, what benchmarks should be used to assess whether the electoral reforms are cultivative and inclusive?
I think what is important is, first, the benchmark would be the electoral reforms process has ability to include the demands by citizens in the public hearing that was held last year. Remember that this reform process is a product of citizens' participation, including civil society, political parties, religious institutions, and even the media, and citizens that engage in that process. And so for me, what are we looking out for? That the reform process produces an electoral act that truly guarantees transparent elections in Nigeria to improve the quality of our process. That secondly, the reform process ensures that provisions enables better participation or increased participation of citizens. And I think the third part, that the electoral law or the electoral act that comes out from this electoral reform process ensures that incidents of electoral fraud and manipulations are dealt with and properly mitigated with the law. And I think that is what Nigerians want. Nigerians deserve and demand credible elections. And so when you see the debates around the electronic transmission of results, is because consistently we've seen that the result collation process remains the weakest link in our electoral process. And the demand is we want our results from the polling units, once we conclude voting and the result and the data, or rather the votes are entered in the result sheet from EC8A, that the BVAS, which has functioned optimally, consistently in every election we've had since it was deployed, that the BVAS is used to take a picture of this result and upload, and that the data is transmitted, which would be used during collation. We've seen this work. We know it works. All we want is for it to become mandatory in the Electoral Act. And I do believe that what we're seeing now is just the politicization of our electoral, of people's, the citizens' demand for electoral integrity. And it's quite unfortunate that we have senators who are trying to manipulate the facts and misrepresent the reality. We can achieve this. We've been doing this successfully, and Nigeria has the capacity to electronically transmit results across polling units. We've seen this work in real time.
Professor Nnah, can you give me a bit of insight on how the current reform debate reflects gaps in stakeholder consultations and participatory governance?
Well, the truth is that even when they made the consultation that was being highlighted here, you discover that some of us queried that consultation because, for instance, they were coming to Lagos on a Friday or thereabout, and that information was given 24 hours before they arrived. So at times, people were not aware that they were even consulting. And the ones that gave the consultation, that's why people are protesting today, because the few that were able to make it to the center where they were doing that so-called consultation, it made it emphatically clear that we need electronic transmission of results, because like has been said time and time over, you know, this manipulation occurs when they move from the polling centers to the local government, and from the local government to the collation center. It is within that period that they manipulate the result and write whatever they want. And that's why people are saying, at the center, do a real-time transfer so that everybody will see what has transpired. And then it will be difficult for manipulations here and there. One African country just had an election, and it was the result came out in 24 hours or 48 hours. So why wouldn't our own come out in 24, 48 hours? And if we transmit this result seamlessly, real time, within 24 to 48 hours, we should have all the results. So, and that's what people are saying. And then the issue of litigations will not be there. People spend a lot of money going to court and produce no results, because at the end of the day, they will ask you to go to court, knowing fully well that you get nothing from the courts. It's only in Nigeria, even in other African countries, in Ghana, the politicians are afraid of court. But in Nigeria, with a wave of hand, the politicians will tell you to go to court.
Cynthia, I know that you mentioned earlier that in terms of capacity, Nigeria does have what it takes. Now, could demonstration signal deeper systematic trust deficits in Nigeria's electoral management framework?
The demand, in fact, this is one of the reform process where we've had a lot more citizens' participation and agitation. And it shows you that Nigerians want something to believe in again, because already there is low trust in the electoral management body and almost no trust in the judiciary. Normally, the court should be the last hope of the ordinary citizen. But as it is now, there is also very low trust in the court's ability to deliver justice in a way that actually upholds and strengthens our democracy, which is why we're back to the law. Let's get the law clear. Let's get the reform process and the law. And so when you ask me what we're seeing currently is, one, there is heightened interest in the reform process because Nigerians, like I said, demand and deserve elections that actually reflect the will of the people, but that the process is credible and transparent. The second part is a lot of Nigerians from the last electoral process have started losing hope in elections totally and even faith in our democracy. And so for them, this is an entry point. If we have a law that can guarantee a credible process, then it also inspires faith and confidence in our democracy. And I think this is what our politicians don't understand, that in the Senate, the hub of democracy, their role is to ensure that they make laws that strengthens democracy, that they make laws that reflect the will and desires of the people. And I think the third part for me is a lot of citizens, especially younger people, are looking on looking for something to hold on to. And when you have a large youth population and the larger percentage of these young people are asking for better deployment for electoral technology, then it means the National Assembly has to take actions to reflect the desires of the larger percentage of its population, which are young people. And I think for this process, what do we seek to achieve if we have electronic transmission of result mandatory in our law? The first, beyond the transparency part, it ensures that there is better computational integrity of data and numbers of our result process. As it is now, we do not have any system of check legally allowed. And so this ensures that both the manual and electronic process run hand in hand, and the electronic process enables better verification of the manually transmitted result or transfer and collated results. So this is what it does. It provides a better check on the system that guarantees integrity. It also gives litigants, political parties who want to go to court, it gives them a source of evidence to challenge either result, because once it is mandated in the law without this failure clause that was introduced by the Senate, it gives politicians an opportunity to have evidence that can be tendered in court. And I think we keep forgetting the third part, the inclusivity part. A lot of women, young people, and new candidates coming to the political space may not have enough resources to deploy to every polling unit. And so when this is mandated in the law, it also promote inclusivity for young women and younger people who get, and women in general, and young people who get into the process, to ensure that you don't need to deploy everywhere your agents. Wherever you have the capacity to deploy to, you deploy. Other places you can have someone who is there to download the results, and you can collate alongside the Electoral Commission. So this is an important reform in our electoral process, and I do believe that the level of agitation we're seeing from the people shows that Nigerians actually want elections to work for them. They still believe in democracy, but the Senate should not position itself as a major threat to our democracy. They should listen to the demands of the people. And in the conference committee, which is the next stage, the demand is that they adopt the House version with a little review in some of the text, but the House version is better. This failure clause that was introduced by the Senate creates dangerous ambiguity that we should not allow ourselves to get into. You already know that in Nigeria, once there is an exception to a general rule, the exception becomes the rule. We do not want to create dangerous ambiguity in our elections if we want elections that meet integrity tests, and most importantly, that inspire citizens' confidence in the electoral process and in our democracy.
Really great insights there, Cynthia. Thank you. Professor Nnah, now can you tell us from a policy standpoint, how could lawmakers balance legislative authority with public sentiment in electoral reform processes?
I want to call it public sentiment, because if you say public sentiment, it looks as if the public are just trying to say things that will benefit them. No, I think the legislature, more especially the Senate, should be able to balance public opinion with whatever policy they want to put in place. The citizenry are the employers of the Senate and the House of Reps. And your employer have told you, this is what we want. And we are going ahead to say, no, people should not, the Senate president was saying the other day that people should not intimidate him. Who is intimidating who? He's the person intimidating us. See, you know that our laws, that's why some of us are complaining of that constitution, is fraught with a lot of lacunas. Now, coming to put a lacuna in this act again is a big problem, because we know, like she said, that what lawyers do is look for lacunas in the law to hinge on and leave the main thing. And that's what they want to achieve here. And that's why we are saying that this thing must be done with everybody in mind, with the citizenry in mind. The people have lost faith in elections. So, and what the youth is saying now is that, please, let us vote and let our votes count. We don't want a situation where we go and stand on the sun, vote, wait for it to be counted. Now take results home. By the time INEC will bring their result, it will look as if something happened along the line. Then they'll begin to tell us of glitches or no glitches. So we don't want to hear such things, because all of us, most of the youth that you're talking about today are internet survey. So I don't know why they're saying that. You know, I don't know why they must put that clause there. because it is, I mean, the Senate are not being fair to Nigerians. I want to say it succinctly without mincing words. They are not being fair to Nigerians. They only consider themselves. And well, that's who politicians are. There are people that believe in themselves. If you believe in them, you have yourself to blame.
Professor Simeone Nnah and Cynthia Mbamalu, thank you so much for your time.